Good evening, guys, and welcome to another live at 9:45. Although this week we are not so live. However, I think it's going to be better than the last not so live episode, given the fact that I have a new way of doing things. So hopefully you are going to be able to comment and have the discussion like you always have in the past. while viewing this previously recorded episode, and ideally I'll be having time to comment as well while that's all going on. So if you don't know what Live at 9:45 is, Live at 9:45 is a live question answer show where I discuss with people who are prominent in the scale brawling community, scale building community. We talk about where they've been, what's going on, and tips and tricks along the way. Try to keep things a little bit of informative and also keep things on the PG level. Please keep things in PG. I try to keep it family friendly so that anybody could pick this up, watch it, view it, and enjoy what's going on there. Other than that, welcome to the show, and we're going to get things fired up. I'm going to bring this week's guest over. His name is Kevin Jowett. I believe I got it right. Probably wrong, but it's okay. So we're going to transfer him over right now and get this thing fired up. So, Kevin, how's it going?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Adam.
Hey, thanks for being on. Did I get it right? Did I mess it up?
No, you did perfectly. You did perfectly, dude.
Good. Patting myself on the back over here.
Very well done. So we're all dialed in, ready to go.
Yes, everything's up. We're running. And this is going to be a good one, man. I can't wait. So let's begin this process with tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm 45-ish. I'm married to my lovely wife, Martina, and I'm a graphic designer gone AWOL.
Oh, nice.
I grew up in a car family, mostly street rods and muscle cars and stuff, and kind of been around the automotive stuff. And I lived in a hockey family as an artist, so there were some hurdles.
Yeah, I bet.
A little bit of disappointed about the skates, but happy about the pencil, I guess, right?
Right. Excuse me. How long have you been in this hobby?
Right. This is where I had to take notes because I have a really bad memory. So it's kind of crazy that you have to look at notes on your own life. One date I know for sure was 1984 is when I started in.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So that has been a while. So
Yeah.
you've been in the hobby longer than I've been alive. Just to say, not trying to date you or hit you with the age number, but dude, that's a long time. So with being in the hobby for that long, here comes like the sidebar question. With being in the hobby for that long, have you always stuck with the same thing, or has it like ebbed and flowed through different variations? What you're doing in the hobby?
That's kind of a perfect question because there's kind of been 3 seasons to this. So there were the early years, which I have written down as 84 through 87. And then there was a stretch that my wife suggested after our first house renovation that I treat myself to a hobby, not knowing much about my history in RC and maybe some addiction problems, that I would get back into this and so strong. So that went from 2005 to 2013, and then a little bit of a break, which we will probably get into later on. And I've just started getting my feet back into the pond this past year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what or who got you started in this hobby?
Back in the 80s, my stepbrother had his side of the family had a close friend. His name was Joe Leith, and he brought a bunch of his RC vehicles to the farm and let 2 10-year-olds loose, 10-year-old maniacs loose with a couple of his buggies. And Joe had a collection that I've probably yet to see one this large, and I'm talking hundreds from planes, trucks, buggies, everything. So this guy was generous enough to kind of let us loose and really go and experiment and have a good time. And once we got our hands on them, dude, there was no turning back at that point. That same summer, one of our older neighbors was out playing around on the road in the one intersection in our town, some dusty pavement, and he was doing donuts with a monster truck. And that was Marui, I think I'm saying that right, Big Bear.
Oh, sweet.
So those were kind of my first introductions to it. And once I saw that truck doing donuts in the street, I mean, it was the most realistic thing I had seen. If we look at it now, it's maybe a little primitive, but pretty cool nonetheless.
But still, I mean, time frame would state that that's pretty realistic.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
What was your first hobby grade RC?
That's kind of, when you had asked me on, I started watching everybody else's stuff, which is, by the way, guys, everything's been fantastic so far. It's been a treat to watch these. I started, of course, going through the questions, going, oh, geez, how am I going to answer that? And I did a little bit of research, and technically, my first one, and I think the company was called Raco, RACO, and it was a
Okay.
Jackrabbit, and it was a quarter scale gas buggy. Technically, that was my first one because a friend of the family knew I wanted to get into it and was trying to do me a solid. Well, he gave me this gas buggy, and it had no radio gear in it. And his suggestion for a 10-year-old was to lock the steering in one direction, fire it up, lock the throttle open, and let it run in the lot while it ran out of gas. So you can imagine, I mean, they weren't super fast back then, but it was heavy. So my dad kind of caught wind of this, and I think he didn't want me to shear both my legs off. Thought maybe it'd be a better idea to come up with something. So I bugged my parents for an RC car, like so many other people have talked about.
Yeah.
And they promised if I was a good kid that summer, they would find a solution for me. So
Hmm.
I was telling my dad about the guy down the road that had this Big Bear kit and what he had been doing and stuff like that. And because I had grown up in a car family, my dad, one of the businesses my dad had was importing hot rods and muscle cars into Canada from California.
All
So
right.
I had seen a bunch of cars, and he had bought and sold cars my whole life. And this same guy that had the Big Bear had a Dodge Dart in his driveway. So, kind of as a surprise, my dad went over and he went and bought the Dodge Dart out of his driveway and got the Big Bear as a package deal,
Hmm.
which was really cool, right? So,
Yeah.
the next day I come home from school. The guy is in our kitchen and they're signing a bill of sale. I don't know if you guys do that down south.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, they're signing a bill of sale, and I look on the living room floor, and the Big Bear is there. And I thought, okay, fantastic, we're in this now. And because I had, I guess I had basically stalked this poor guy. I'd watched this guy for a summer, and I knew how to plug the battery in, of course, and get this thing fired up.
Hmm.
And before he could say, "Don't run it on the carpet," I yanked the throttle, and it pulled about a 3 foot wheelie and stripped all the gears in the gearbox. So my first RC experience of my own RC lasted just seconds, but dude, it was rad because this thing wheelied 3 feet. That was the important part. So 3 gearboxes later, things changed a little bit, and Dad took me to the hobby shop, and we did a little bit of research. Sorry if this answer is too long.
No,
Did a
you're
little bit
good.
of research, and we asked actually my dad asked the owner of the hobby shop, what would you suggest? And the buggies were really popular, and he said, well, we have Tamiya buggies, we have the Super Champ, which is, this is old, I know. And he said, but it's a lot of aluminum on it, and if the kid is hard on stuff, it might not be a great solution. We also
Hmm.
have a Tamiya Hornet, which is plastic and replacement parts. If he breaks things, it'll be cheaper to fix.
Yeah.
So of course my dad chuckles, and we went home with the Hornet, right?
Hmm. That makes
So,
perfect sense.
yeah, yeah, go durable. This kid's gonna wreck stuff for sure.
Yeah. So how? All right. I have to ask. You stripped the gearbox, in the first like minute of driving it. How long from then till like you got another gearbox? Was your dad awesome and like took you right down, or was it like weeks or?
Yeah, well, this is the tricky part because I grew up in such a small town and like farming communities that we had a Radio Shack 40 minutes away, and the
Hmm.
one hobby shop had limited supplies, and it was all Tamiya stuff, and of course, it didn't help you with Marui products much. There was a bit of
Yeah.
a crossover, but it didn't help. And Dad, even being a mechanic, wasn't really interested in going and remaking a gearbox or something. So it
Right.
was it was a good 3 weeks. So you could imagine a kid that got like 3 seconds on this thing, just sitting there rocking back and forth, waiting for stuff to come in. So it was 3 week intervals just to get gears for it.
Right.
And anybody that's owned one, I know that a lot of people have had that experience as their first experience. They grew up in my era, know about that truck and know about the gearbox. So.
Yeah. I don't doubt it. So props to your patience, man. think that'd
Uh,
be a hard thing to come by nowadays.
Dude, I had no
But
choice. I don't know if I'd call it patience. I didn't have a choice.
so if you weren't in RC, what do you think your hobby of choice would be?
That's pretty easy because I have probably 10 other hobbies. Probably the main one, if I wasn't currently scrambling and working on RC stuff, it would
Hmm.
be simulator racing. I do a lot of iRacing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, any like, so is it like a specific? I don't even want to say game. Like, is that what you call it? Like, I,
Yeah, some of the
I'm
purists
trying
get
not to
upset when
I'm
you
trying not
say
to put it
game.
down because I know it gets
Yeah.
really, really complicated. Um, is it like, is it like Forza stuff, or is it like there's a specific like program? I don't even know how to say it. You might as well just.
Right. Okay. So it's basically it's web based, and it's about as realistic as it gets without going to a full professional level. The
Okay.
tracks are laser spec'd within millimeters, or whatever small inches are, and it's very very detailed. So it's almost just before like pro level stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
some people get mad if it's called games, but you refer it to whatever it is. It's playing pretend race car.
Mm-hmm.
And I take it pretty seriously, and I'm on my third simulator. Parts of it are behind me. My last one was pretty serious. So you have the three screens wrapping around you, and
Yeah.
I'm working at going towards virtual reality in the next year or so. I'm hoping things catch up and it's a little bit more reliable. But
Mm-hmm.
I take it pretty seriously, and my buddy Doug and I, we have a little race team where if it's a team event, we'll team up, and we've done some neat events. Like we did World Cup series where we went and raced Miatas around Nürburgring,
All
and
right.
we were actually quite competitive. One year we actually got silver medal for it, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you end up with real race car drivers, and you end up with people that just have a wheel bolted to the desk. And
Yeah.
the world champion for ages was winning, and he had a wheel bolted to a desk.
That's
So
crazy, man.
you don't have to build special stuff to be competitive. Much like RC,
Yeah.
you run what you have and you get used to it, and you create neural pathways that just make you accept the way things are.
Right. That was a very scientific answer for
Yeah, sorry,
keep driving the same truck over and over again and you get better at
dude. Yeah,
it.
and I'm lucky I can say neural pathways. Don't ask me to
Right?
spell
No, it's good. I
it.
liked it. I think it was a good scientific word to throw in there. But I think it also harkens to the point that had made so many times on the show that you don't necessarily have to have the best of the best. You don't necessarily have to have the lightest truck or the heaviest truck or the most powerful or the slowest or any of that stuff. It's all in how you do at driving it. And that's because you spend the time on it. So,
That's correct. Yeah, I strongly believe that. It's anything in life is like that.
hmm,
Yeah.
agreed. So I have two very standard questions, and I'm curious to see where these ones fall out. Big tires or small tires?
Okay. Do you want to do both questions at the same time,
Oh yeah,
or
big tires
just
or small tires, brushed or brushless?
okay? Big tires or small tires? Proportionate tires. Get out a ruler and do the math. The answer will be yours. I think I think the conversation tires and or big tires and small tires actually
Hmm.
exist because of two different worlds: the scale world and the competitive crawling world.
Right.
And I think that maybe sometimes we need to consider that they two don't overlap in some spots. Tires is just one of them. So for me, I've had some pretty large tires on stuff, but that might be on a fire truck. Who knows? So
Right.
proportionate tires and a ruler and a math will give you the answer pretty
Hmm.
easily.
Right.
Brushed or brushless, for me, it's easy. You know how long I've been doing this, so the Tamiya can is generally my answer.
Hmm.
Unless I'm going out and building something to go out and get a little wild with. I've been known to put like 1/8 scale brushless systems and things that aren't supposed to receive those, with some pretty fun results. But for my scale stuff, it's almost always the silver can. And if it's going to be exposed at all, I'll go to Tamiya makes I think it's the RS 540 motor, has a black can on it.
Okay. All right. I mean, you can't go wrong with old Trusty. So.
No, trusty and sometimes rusty as well, depending on the application.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, what do you like most about RC?
Okay. So, and I wrote this one down because I considered this, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a blessing and a problem in the same way. What I like most is that you have a control over a miniature world, uh, part of which I have a hand in. So that's the building. The other part is kind of an eye for capturing things, and you let Mother Nature take care of the rest of the work. It's one of the few things that we actually get to have control over in life is the small world.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's awesome. Uh, Many people, I mean, I'm shifting subjects on you just a little bit here. I don't know how many people are or are not aware of your standing with being the founder of Scale Builders Guild. Can you talk a little bit about the history of where that came from? Can you talk about what Scale Builders Guild is for newer people who may not know what
Mhm.
Scale Builders Guild is? And then the rest of my question kind of leads into now you're not running that. Now Matt and Richard have taken it over. So can you like walk through that whole cycle history piece and inform the people a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, I sure can. It's a story that probably most people would be curious about if they do know I was the founder or the previous owner.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something I can cover, and something that's very important to me that we did cover today because the forum itself and the people that run it were very important to me as well. So I can start off with the history, and I have to jump pages here. And sorry, I have pages
That's
because I
fine.
need to keep track of myself. A little bit of a timeline is that and the cool part about this is that if people the transition was seamless enough, and the two people running it, Matt and Richard, are so good at it that you'd never know anything had changed. And that's probably to me the most beautiful part about this is that I show up 6 years later, and I can't the community and the feel of it is the same, and that's pretty amazing. So um it's it's uh it's been a while. They were a natural fit. This started in 2005, 2006, and some of the local crawling community, and I mean crawling, so mostly competition crawlers and stuff. Uh,
Right.
a lot of the locals didn't feel comfortable on some of the larger forums. They didn't feel maybe that they could post up their stuff and get feedback, or that they were kind of welcome on the forums. So,
Mm-hmm.
having a graphic design background and being in the industry, I kind of took on making a small freebie forum, and it was actually called Crawl BC when we started.
Okay.
So it we kind of grew, we kind of learned some things, and also with free form software, you probably are aware of this, that sometimes you don't own all the intellectual property. So
Okay.
as things actually started to get some traction, we were starting to get nervous. It's like, Jesus, this if this works, we don't own this property and we can't do anything. We actually can't go and move it to somewhere else. So
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, we had people in other provinces. You guys know what provinces are, right?
Yeah, it's how Canada's separated, kind of like United States, except you have a bunch of provinces. Got it.
Bingo, super. So people in other provinces, some really cool members were showing up, going, "Hey, I know this is a BC forum, but can I play too? I'm over in Alberta." Hi, Joe Bueller, and we thought, you know what? Okay, so I guess the next logical step is number one to pay for some forum software, and change the name so others in Canada feel welcome. So it became Crawl Canada.
Mm-hmm.
In some other places it was known as Cry Canada because we had some rules and we some things we didn't put up with. So they called us Cry Canada for some time, but Crawl Canada. So it went on till what have I got here? Into '08, and my wife was Martina was a big part of this in the background, and all as well as a good friend of mine, Rick Crary. He was my head moderator,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of developed this thing and grew, and we went through growing pains as forums do. You've been around forums long enough, you know the growing pains I speak of.
Oh yeah, I've seen it, and like I think the biggest one that like kind of made some of like it kind of made RC Crawler, to name a different one,
Mhm.
kind of die off was that a lot of people relied on PhotoBucket, and when that tanked on its own because they started charging like obscene amounts of money for you to keep your photos there, then the threads kind of died. And so I think that was kind of the downfall of them, which wasn't necessarily RC Crawler's fault because you could host it through like Tapatalk and stuff because all of
Sure.
my photos are still there.
Mhm.
But because so many people were so ingrained on using that one thing, it really hurt them in that department.
Yeah.
I don't think I noticed that as much on Scale Builders Guild. Um,
Well, yeah. Even on Crawl Canada, we actually had it. So if you were a paid subscriber, you could actually host. You could upload stuff to the site as well.
mhm,
But also, I think a big thing about our community. I'm not saying it's completely unique to Crawl Canada or Scale Builders Guild, but our members really invested in things. So if I think in a lot of cases, and I had to go back and do it myself recently, I had to go back
mhm,
and repopulate threads with images. I
yeah.
think that people felt strongly enough about it that if they did lose their stuff and the experience was good enough, they would go and invest the time to go and find an alternate solution to PhotoBucket
Mhm,
or upload to the forum itself.
yeah.
So yeah, we spent some considerable time with Crawl Canada and had some good times. We tried some unique things for promotion, including Rick and myself going on what was called the Redneck Road Trip, which is a sponsored trip down to the desert, to the high desert in California.
Sweet.
Yeah, to one of the Hammers events. So it was quite good, and we tried a bunch of unique things. Number one, to have fun, but also to include the community in some of our experiences. So
Right.
some worked, some didn't.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, all right. I think that kind of sums us up in that realm. So
For Crawl Canada, it does, but
yeah, there we go.
switch into Scale Builders Guild.
Okay, so let's hear about Scale Builders Guild. Uh, like I know there's a lot of backstory to this. I only wrote one question. I knew it was going to take the guidance of multiple questions to get the whole story out there.
Yeah.
Now we're moving on to like this was the precursor to Scale Builders Guild. Where did Scale Builders Guild come from? What happened in there? The handoff to the other two gentlemen who we have previously.
Right. Okay. So much the same as the transition into Crawl Canada. I guess I didn't have the foresight to think of what happens when it's outside of Canada. Um, Crawl Canada was growing, and it was established enough that we figured this was going to be a consistent thing, and we could keep putting some time in and invest some time and some money into it, and kind of keep the community going. So um, so many people on the forums, including myself and some of the moderators, were building so many different things that were outside of crawling, and things were going so much further towards the scale into things
hmm
that the word crawl was now kind of jamming things up a little bit as well. So we were bouncing some ideas back and forth and trying to come up with ideas and solutions for a good name.
hmm
And I was working at the time. Excuse me. I was working at the time for RC Car Action. I was a contributor
Awesome.
and doing some writing for them and doing some cross promotion with them. Um, Also with Axial Racing, early Axial Racing, with some of the, I think, former management and representatives.
hmm
And this is where things kind of get political, and I won't go into it too far, but
Yeah.
we were considering a name change, but Axial at the time. And I will say that companies like people progress and work through things.
Yep.
Nobody or nothing is perfect, and
hmm
we all learn from things. So this is in no way a thing to drag anybody through the mud. But Axial at the time didn't want to sponsor us outside
hmm
of my own personal work with the name Canada on the forum.
Gotcha.
So I sat down with Martina and a good friend, Al Werner, and we had a coffee and we bounced some names around and came up with one of the ideas was the Scale Builders Guild because it kind of described what we did. A lot of people's work was getting so far towards the artistic end of things that guild
hmm
made sense.
Yeah.
And if you throw scale on it, it doesn't matter if it's an on-road car, if it's a motorcycle, a boat, who cares? Your goal is to make it look fairly scale. So we bounced the idea off the moderators because we included them. We included them in all the decisions in the forum. They were a big part of things, even though things might have progressed and things changed along the way, we always made sure we included them, and they were an asset to things. So everybody agreed to this. So Scale Builders Guild it was,
Yeah.
and we had great success while I was doing things. And I have a date here. I just have to find it. I think it went '08 to 13,
Okay.
and in 2013 we had, I think, is pretty much the same moderator team on as Matt and Richard have now.
Hmm.
They've stayed on all the way through, which is fantastic because I mean we've grown great relationships with people, and actually got to the point where you'd wake up and our daily routine was checking in. So people are all over
Right.
the world, and we're checking in and we're living lives together, which is pretty fantastic stuff.
Absolutely.
Um, with the workload, I was running 4 hours sleep for almost a decade
Hmm.
and working 3 jobs and running the forum, and not running it by myself because moderators did just as much as myself. But
Yeah.
I started to degrade, and health degraded with it. And it came to a point where I was having a hard time, and I was making decisions that wouldn't really benefit myself or the forum.
Right.
So there's some tough calls to make, and one that I was not interested in was having the forum go to seed and disappear. And
Hmm.
I don't know if you see that, but our lights are flickering now. So you were worried about your power at your place. Now it's my turn.
I did just see
Uh,
it. It's
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Like, it
Okay.
is what it is. If for anybody who's watching this, if we do end up losing power, because I've had a crazy windstorm all day, apparently stuff's going on in Canada as well. If we lose
Yep.
it, we'll pick it back up. We'll just resume it at any point in time. Um, but while you continue your story here with all of the Scale Builders Guild stuff, I have to ask people who are going to be watching this live. I guess kind of currently, it feels weird to say that because I know I'm not current with you, but also people in the comments, if you are a forum member, if you are a forum member on Scale Builders Guild, what is your screen name? Your username on Scale Builders Guild. That might link some people with different YouTube names, so on and so forth, and that could be a nice exercise of people commenting and things going up over there. So, but anyway, we're back into we're kind of winding down at Scale Builders Guild, and
Yeah.
you didn't want to see it go away, but you
Absolutely
also
not.
knew that you weren't, I don't want to say not interested, but you weren't going to be continuing capacity that you were before.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Seeing it go to seed would be kind of heartbreaking for me, and I know a lot of other people, because uh, the forum, the members, the moderators, all of us invested years and years into this, and it sounds kind of cliche to say this, but it's the members and the participation that makes a forum. And so
Yeah.
many people were with us through the growing pains of going from Crawl BC to Crawl Canada and literally having to transfer over their stuff to it. So going to seed wasn't an option, which kind of put even more pressure on things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the other options was actually selling it to a manufacturer or a magazine and having them go.
Okay.
And maybe as we get into some of the other stories, you'd understand why I was absolutely against that.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed as though the only option would be to give it to a member or one of the moderators in the forum. And I think you'll see that I've made the right choice.
I tend to agree with you. Matt and Richard have done a tremendous job, and um, Matt especially is. I
Yeah,
do not know how he is keeping up with the video workload that he is doing, plus the build stuff he is doing, and holding a job. I know that the video editing side of things, even though that is part of Matt's job, is video,
sure.
so he's very good at it. It's still time consuming. Shooting video, dreaming it up, editing it, all that stuff. I'm sure it's got to be a tremendous workload on it.
Yeah, is it ever? And but I've known Matt for quite some time, and he'd of course help me through some issues as a moderator and as
Hmm.
a friend, and work through things. And I was confident with it. Number one, what he does for a living. Of course, he can handle the media end of things,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
also doing that and being in that industry, where I'm on the more the digital artist kind of side of things with in my own studio environment though. So
Hmm.
without the pressures and the scheduling, I can schedule like your average artist, which is of course between all of us is a nightmare. I knew that Matt would be able to schedule because he's worked in studios, and I was confident that he would know what to do, and to go and put almost felt unfair to go put this load on somebody, but I knew if somebody was able to handle it, he could take care of it. And I'm so glad that he gets to share the role with Richard, because I think
Yeah,
they complement each other as a pair, not even just as a comedy team, um,
absolutely.
just as a working couple.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, but they do. They everything I've ever seen them do, every time I've ever seen like with each other at events and talk to them, like they very much complement each other. They're very hand in hand. Really good friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the keys to what's going on. And I don't know them super well, but I know them well enough to tell that they didn't just like start hanging out a year ago. Like they've been connected for a long time, and they know that they're going to work well together. And so I'm guessing that had some factor in their decision moving ahead in that realm.
Absolutely. The more you get to know them, the more you'll see that they were able to naturally kind of bridge the gap even between forums. So although they worked with us as Scale Builders Guild, and it was seemed to be primarily their forum, they also went on RC Crawler and
Hmm.
Scale 4x4, and they had a really kind of a really cool group around them, and they were able to bridge the gap where there were no boundaries between forums. And I think that was a really important part of it. It's something that I haven't always been able to navigate. And as things progress and as the pressure ramped up, um, it seemed as though I was maybe not the right fit to be able to accomplish what they've accomplished. And I've told Matt that several times recently, well, both of them, that I'm so proud to show up, and it still feels like the same place, and it still has that community environment.
Yeah.
But the level of quality they've accomplished, especially with YouTube and Instagram, is just it's something I wouldn't have been able to do.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm very proud.
Um, it and it's doing phenomenal. And even in the social media age we are in right now, it's still doing well. It's thriving. There's new builds over there all the time.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been on a forum and you don't go to forums typically, I highly
Shame.
suggest you go check out the Scale Builders Guild. There's actually a link in the description down below in the video. I put that in there for sure because I knew that was one of the topics we were going to be covering, and I wanted to make sure that anybody who's never been there, go click the link. Your mind will explode. Go look around. Check out some of these builds that are over there. People are doing absolutely amazing things, and honestly, a lot of it you never see on social media. See it on Facebook, you don't see it on Instagram, and you don't see it on YouTube. There are a lot of guys on there that are also not posting other places. So you need to go check that stuff out for sure. Um
I concur.
all right, so here's the part everybody likes to talk about. As a longtime builder of a bunch of different rigs, I know you have a ton of them under your belt. Can you show us something? Can you share some stuff? Give us some details, and don't worry, everybody. We'll be back to do this more along the ride too. But I think it's time to do a little show and tell.
Okay. Um, One of the ones I'm currently working on, and I literally blew the dust off. Anybody that's followed me on Instagram or one of the recent YouTube videos will have seen this little guy, Tamiya Super Champ. Basically, an all original car that we're cutting up and doing bad things with. Um,
Nice.
this is actually this car belongs to Matt Hicks in tandem with. Sorry, just one second here.
Oh, you're good.
With Blazing Blazer, which was all original in box, and it made people angry, but we took it out of the box and then continued to cut it up, and will continue to, because it's Matt's car and he likes the decision. So we've got a Blazing Blazer and the Super Champ, and both of them will live in a diorama. Just
Sweet.
1 second. Oh, I'll do one at a time here. Sorry. So the Blazer, most of the modifications will be in axles. These were an early set, and I guess we'll get there eventually. But
Hmm.
in the early years, I worked a lot with Chris from GCM, and let's say he put up with a lot. But these are a very early set of his aluminum slots that we were developing for another project. They work perfect on this. And if you've seen the original, the BF Goodrich Blazer
Hmm.
from the mid 400 days, they're pretty close. It's like pretty era specific for a Baja style rig of this sort. Matt Hicks, of course, is the guy that builds all the figures that go on my vehicles.
Hmm.
A lot of folks will know him. So because it's Matt's, some special. Can't say too much about it because there's going to be other stuff on it, but there will be special figures in this and the buggy and surrounding. And the plan is that both of them will live in a diorama environment, but it will be a working diorama.
Awesome.
So it will probably be in a glass case, and it'll have some rotary dials so you can work things. You'll be able to flip the lights on and off. There might be some animation. Um, but that's one of the projects we have on the go. So those two, which is kind of a treat to have here because, of course, the Super Champ, as part of my story,
Yeah.
was one of the first ones that I almost got as a kid,
Right.
and wish I could have. So it's pretty cool. He sent that up to me as a gift, and now I'm regifting it, but that's okay because it's going back to him, and I know he'll like it. So
Right. And the whole like diorama with the opportunity to have some stuff working inside of it. That sounds really cool, man. You don't see a lot of people doing stuff like that, especially crawling hobby, because once people build them, they want to run them, and I know I personally could never pull it off. Like I'd have to drive it. I couldn't
yeah,
do it. No, I
yeah.
couldn't do it. So that it's a cool
It might
concept.
seem a shame to some people, but of course there's always that built not bought, and then the shelf queen thing.
Yeah,
And I'm totally okay. I've driven a lot of super champs now in my
yeah.
day. I haven't driven a Blazing Blazer, and I'm still not going to for some time. That won't be one of them. But everybody kind of has their own likes and wants, and I mean,
Yeah,
this hobby is as much of an art as any other, and it's subjective. So your art is your art. If I choose to build these things or cut up a $5,000 to $7,000 new in box Blazing and Blazer, that might anger some people.
I
It
say
might
cut them
not.
all up. Do what you want to do. It's your
Guess
stuff.
whose truck it is, and it isn't yours. It's Matt's, and he's like, "Yeah, let's get out the saw.
Yeah.
Let's build something neat with it." So we've always had, and Matt's always been part of the Tamiya Club, along with James and Jeremy, and I always loved their style. And they always made stock cars look so much cooler by kind of adding their style and flavor to it. So
Hmm.
these will be built kind of in a fashion that we almost wish they had a released from Tamiya in that style. So, iron out some of the scale stuff that's missing, and then also kind of pay homage to uh, the original car themselves, and not try to do too much injustice to them.
Right.
The fine line.
It is, and I'm sure that you're the right guy for the job. I'm not concerned with that at all. I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming out the other end there.
Oh, thanks.
Ah,
We're going to document it and hopefully put some videos together. And I'm hoping that we can get Matt on because if nobody's seen his work, they should. But an even bigger treat would be watching him sculpt some stuff and seeing how
yeah.
he comes up with these creations. Because I mean, he's a master at his craft.
Oh yeah, he's done. I mean, his figures. I know that they're in your trucks, but they're in a whole host of other people's as well.
Yeah.
And for years I've followed the not followed him very closely, but that figure is so unique
Mhm.
and stands out inside of the hobby that really it just kind of it always catches my eye every single time. It's cool. So
It definitely is definitely one of a kind, and at one glance, if you've seen one of his figures, you'll recognize another, and you'll know it's
Hmm.
his work because it definitely has a nice style to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
While we're talking about building, and so when building a scale rig, what kind of tools do you use for the custom fabrication side of things? A lot of your builds have been very involved, and I know you're working on one currently that is extremely involved. Like, what are you using? Anything special? Anything like that?
Uh, that's kind of a neat question. It's a fun question for me because I have a lot of really cool gear. I have jeweler's lathes, and I have some really neat stuff that's just kind of dedicated just to miniature stuff. But
Hmm.
I really enjoy just working with basic hand tools. And recently on the Icon project, people have been commenting, "Hey, dude, why don't you get yourself a drill press or blah blah blah." And a drill press would eliminate some of the injuries I've had recently. But I think it's a big deal for me to prove that you guys don't need a lot of special tools to accomplish what we do. You just have to kind of think outside the box. If you don't have something to bend, if you don't have a bender, bend it around something.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of working towards, and comments like that have kind of fueled me to go and do things like go and put the jeweler's lathe in the backdrop, throw a drill in my vise, tape the trigger open, and use that to turn metal, just to prove that guys, you don't have to be fancy. Of course, nicer tools, you're more efficient, you're more precise. But
Yeah.
in many cases, back in the early years, when kind of got something cool. In the early years when people were putting crawlers together out of or scale trucks out of crawlers, we used to build stuff like this.
Hmm.
This is one of my first attempts at a chassis with the help of Roger, our C guy. He machined these, but initially we were cutting these out of sheets of aluminum with a jigsaw and then hand filing them.
So I love that you just said that because uh when I first got into this, I was very much headed for the performance side, trying to build my own like bodiless I didn't have MOA stuff, but like bodiless sporty,
Mm.
and I cut probably 4 or 5 different chassis like side plates, PVP style plates out of flat aluminum stock with a jigsaw and filed all the edges, made it all smooth. So um it kind of where I came from in all of this as well. So that's awesome. I didn't wouldn't have put that together. So.
Yeah, I think I just think it's important. It's important to know, and I always have respect for those that have kind of, you're not suffering through not having the right tools, but you're kind of doing without.
Hmm.
Um, but there's not much sacrifice in it because the education you get while you move along, and of course there'll be this natural progression where you might have a small workshop, you might have a bench that you have 5 items on, a hacksaw, a hammer, and a dream, and
Right.
you work your way out from there. And maybe on the next truck you go and invest in something. If something's on sale, maybe get yourself a drill press. But a drill, almost everybody has one. Get at it, hold it
Hmm.
straight, and hope for the best, and do the best you can. None of this stuff has to be perfect to be cool. It just has to be your own.
Yeah. I love that statement. I'm a big fan of it doesn't have to be perfect to be.
Yeah,
Um, I don't measure a lot of stuff. I eyeball it, and if it's close enough, then it works, and that's good
yeah,
enough for me. And
yeah.
so, that's the way I've always operated. It, just because the added measurement stuff, although it could save time in the long run, oftentimes it takes more time when I'm building. Um,
Sure.
eh, but I have like torn a bunch of stuff back apart because it didn't line up even close to where it needed. So I think it's
Well,
give and take.
like anything in life, though, whether it's these trucks or a house reno, dude, I can call a plumber to go and put a toilet in a house, but I can do it twice for less the cost. I can
Oh,
screw
yeah.
it up once. I can literally, and I've done it before. I can drop a toilet on the way into the house, go back to buy another one, and it's still cheaper. And I've gotten an education. I now know how to carry a toilet.
There you
I know
go.
how to install it. You save some money and you get a bit of an education behind you. And I think that's the way, probably, if you ask anybody, that's how they got their education in this. We didn't start out as scale truck builders. You just
Correct.
kind of you ease into it, you learn, and if you're patient with yourself and forgiving if you do make a mistake, there's no harm in starting again. No
Yeah.
penalties.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I've been saying it for a long time that even if you build something and it isn't the coolest thing that anybody's ever seen, it's gonna be the coolest thing you've seen because you built it, and you like there's pride in that. There's efficiency to not building it yourself, just paying and getting what you get.
Yeah,
But there's pride in knowing that you took the time and you did it, and although it's not perfect, or I mean, first it's not going to because I built some really ugly stuff. Uh,
yeah.
but it skills and knowledge and so on and so forth. And really, I think that that's not to get on a soapbox, but in the Facebook media times where people are bolting all this stuff onto our trucks now, I feel like that's a piece that starting to slip away and be missed from the newer people in the hobby. You don't have to do it as much out of need. You have to choose to do it because you want to do it. And
Yeah.
I try to always talk about building still some of that and what goes on.
I think that people that show up now are lucky. The days of sorting through used TLT axles to try to go and make a crawler uh, look like a truck are might be gone. You'll still always have the people that prefer to do that. That's fantastic. But showing up as a new person, having all these options, must be really exciting. I know it's exciting for me, even coming back because
Yeah.
I kind of left things for a little while when 3D was in its infancy, and then coming back to see what especially what James has done with and to the industry is fantastic. And I have zero objections to somebody showing up, buying parts, whether painted already or not, and
Mm-hmm.
bolting them truck to the truck. That's part of the hobby as well, and there should
Agreed.
be no shame in that whatsoever. Um, One of the things at the magazine when I did write is I never wanted to discourage somebody, no matter how they wanted to enjoy the hobby. I have owners that buy my trucks that don't work on their own stuff, and that's okay too. You want to enjoy them how you want to enjoy them.
Yep.
Um, I think there'll always be purists that always want to build their own stuff, and there'll always be the guy that, oh, back in the day we used to whittle our stuff out of plastic. It's like that's cool, but as long as you get to an end product that you're happy with, and you can go out in the trail at whatever level, whether scale or not, and just go out and have a good time, who
Yeah.
cares? Nobody should be able to tell you that your idea of this craft is right or wrong.
Fair enough. I couldn't agree more. So back on the topic of tools and fabricating,
Yeah.
do you have a favorite tool? Why would that be your favorite?
I think I got a cool one, and I think that I have one that nobody has, at least not a prototype version. So I'm gonna hold this up. You guys see that?
All right, hold on. We're going to
Is
your
the
screen.
okay?
All
Is the
right.
light blowing it out at all?
A little bit. Can you go move it down just a touch over there? Yeah, that
Here, here, here.
that
Bam,
looks good.
dude.
Whoa. That's
Okay,
okay. Yeah,
right there.
that'll
Okay,
work.
so this is an Altoids case. This is a prototype from Al Jackson. A lot of people have been around for a while will know him as Hey OK. He had Hey
Okay.
OK Performance.
Yeah.
And this, sir, is a dual servo tester. And I was over at his shop one day because he's local. He's one of our moderators for Crawl Canada, actually, and one of the companies that we supported back.
Mhm.
Uh, Al used to build my very first light kits, and they would have a big circuit board on them before things got easier.
Yeah.
Um, Al had this in a shop, and I was like, dude, what is that? And he showed me. It's like, can you make me one? And he actually gave me his. So this is ages old, and you can see that not fancy, but that I think that's one of the reasons. Besides it being super handy, is that it's so cool and so primitive, dude. It's in an Altaid's case,
Yeah, it's awesome.
so it's got a couple potentiometers on it. You can hook up servos to it to test it. I hook up light kits to test it, and I've used this for ages on every single vehicle. So if I had something unique that's a tool that I use for building, this would be the guy. It's one of my prized possessions.
That's absolutely awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool, right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm sure at one point he actually showed people how to make these on his own, but I don't know where to find it currently. I might be able to track that info down for you.
Yeah.
But being able to plug in your servo to make sure things are aligned as you're putting 40 parts in front of them, and having to take it back apart to find out that your servo horn is on wrong or one part of a light kit didn't work. It's an awesome little tester.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that being hugely beneficial.
Yeah.
Um, it's awesome. I would have never expected that as a tool that you use that you use all the time, that is unique and that's your favorite. So
Yeah, I
props,
mean,
man. I love it.
cool. I saved some of these so they'd actually be a surprise for you. So I did save some surprises. All are clean and all are PG. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so back to the people who are watching this live, not live, whoever, if you're watching this, what is like the coolest tool that you guys use on a regular basis that maybe other people don't have or wouldn't think to use, or maybe it's just like your favorite like 2.5 millimeter driver and like that's the thing. And if that's the case, that's awesome. But what's your favorite tool that you use on a regular basis with your RC? Uh, so back to you, Kevin. At one point, you were writing for RC Car Action, and you had kind of stated that already. You had mentioned that inside of our program here.
yeah.
But what can you tell us about that experience and like how did that opportunity come about? Did you like see a ad in the newspaper and apply for a job, or was it like I mean like what happened? Because
Okay.
I feel like there's a lot of people who would love to work for something RC related, but like how?
Yeah, I'm sure they would, and it's kind of an interesting story, and I'm pretty sure it's actually a fairly common one for anybody that's written for the magazines or any other, could be woodworking magazine.
Hmm.
Probably the same, is just kind of being in things and putting yourself out there and kind of getting a bit of a reception back.
Yeah.
So originally, now I will say because I am older. I was around for the very first RC Car Action magazine, and it's one of the things that was one of my. I guess my parents wanted me to read something, so we'll get this guy Cartoons Magazine and RC Car Action. At least the kids reading, right?
Yeah.
So I had the very first RC Car Action magazine, and for years followed them. And it's like you look at it as kids, and I think you go, oh boy, I wish I could do that one day. Or if I was doing model kits as a kid, I would be like, damn, how do I be the kid that builds the model on the front of that box or something, right?
Right.
It'd be fantastic stuff. So I was always a fan, and I'd always kind of, it might sound cheesy, but I always dreamed of actually having that as maybe a job. Maybe I could do that.
Yeah.
So um, I went through, of course, the early years. We'll call it season one. And season two, when my wife said, "Hey, why don't you get back into the hobby?" One of the things, because I was such a fan of the Tamiya Club guys,
Yeah.
thanks, fellas. I started restoring before the re-releases. Started restoring SRB buggies like the Tamiyas, like Sand Scorchers and stuff.
Yeah.
And I had finished restoring a sand scorcher, and my wife and I went to one of the local lakes and took a picture of it and stuff. And I was reading back through RC Car Action magazines again, and she said, "Well, why don't you submit this for the Reader's Rides thing? See if it goes in there, right?" And I'm often not great at I'm not great at attention, and I'm not really good with that stuff. I don't handle it well, but it's like, oh, you know what? Sure, we'll hand it in. Maybe I can win a prize for it or something. And
Hmm.
sure enough, they gave me Ride of the Month, which is, to me, it was pretty cool. I got my picture, like the picture of the car in the magazine, and they sent me a T-shirt, which I just dug out of the closet. Um, it still fits even, so that's cool. And I think they sent me, it was like a Rooster speed control and motor kit or something like that. It was very cool.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
anyways, Kevin Hetmansky, which I believe still works at the magazine and became eventually is my editor there. He contacted me, and they were doing something for, it was for the early Slash release, and he saw some of my paint jobs that I was doing and asked if I'd be interested in painting a body and use it in the magazine. So for me, that was cool. So they shipped up a couple bodies so they could run duplicates if one got wrecked. Also, so that I could show the paint sequence,
Hmm.
and I did kind of like a K&N filters paint livery on it and stuff, and built a fairly primitive scale interior. It had half of a severed Wild Willie's body and a helmet in it, but at least through the window it looked like it had a driver in it. So Kevin was he was pretty happy with it, pretty impressed with it, I guess. And I kind of started a relationship like that with the magazine. And there's a gentleman called Brandon Wilcox who now I think works for Max Amps. He was a contributor at the magazine
Okay.
and contacted me and asked me if I would put a truck together for him. So I ended up building a Jeep YJ and using a bunch of RPP hobby gear. One of their early, I think it was an Outback chassis.
Okay.
I built a truck for Brandon. And as we were going through the process, Brandon was at the time writing a column called Rockpile,
Hmm.
which was basically crawler stuff. And we got to talking on the phone one day, which you and I have experienced that now. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
We got to talking.
We spent some time on the phone.
Yeah, we surely did. It was great too, by
Yeah,
the
I
way.
loved it. I loved it. I wish we would have started earlier, so I didn't have to cut the conversation off.
Your bedtime's so damn early. You live on the other side of the country,
I
right?
do. I do. We got a big time difference to battle, so
Yeah, and this is a big thing. This is actually breakfast for me because I work graveyard shift and I keep my shifts the same on my weekends. So,
yeah.
I mean, this is literally breakfast and you'll be having to go to bed soon. So, anyways, I got talking to Brandon and he was running short on ideas for the column that month. I was like, well, I have something if you want. I can give you some pictures and maybe give you a suggestion if you want. He's like, sure, I'm late. I'll take it. And I said, if you want, I was joking around, I'll write the whole damn article if you want. He said, have at it. And you have it ready for tomorrow. So I went out and I took his truck, and you've probably seen this before 100 times now. I made the article was about cargo, and you go and take a piece of the styrofoam that makes a mess, the white stuff,
Yeah.
carve it out the shape you want, and you take a mixture of white glue and paper towel. You lay it over top, fold it over almost like it's a tarp,
Hmm.
let it dry, and it goes in all the crevices, and it actually, when it dries and you paint it, it looks like scale cargo. So
Awesome.
I went and wrote the article and gave him 5 or 6 pictures, and he turned it in. And I think he did me a favor when he turned it in with my name on it,
Hmm.
uh, because within about a month he had left for Max Amps, I think for probably better opportunity. And Kevin called me up and said, "Do you want to do this and take over Rockpile?" And that's how I started with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, just pretty much a happenstance kind of situation, and I think that happens. The only other person I've had on the show who writes for, I guess an online publication. I don't think Big Squid has a print publication. But Jeremy Griffith was much along the same way. Just got to know the guys. Was doing stuff similar to that, and they were like, "Hey, would you like to do this?" So, I think a lot of opportunities in the RC industry kind of come that way. Uh, it's one of those like who you know and how you know them kind of scenarios.
All of life is really like that, though,
Yeah,
isn't it? It's about putting
yeah,
yourself out there, and if people appreciate what you do or can use you
yep,
to their advantage, then they will, and that opportunity will kind of just pop up. But I guess you have to kind of lean into it long enough that either luck or happenstance, like you said,
yeah,
comes your way.
yeah, and I agree completely in that front for sure. Uh, okay, so next question, man. When we did our test stuff, you'd cautioned a little bit about allowing the hobby to consume too much of your life. And
Hmm.
so, what did you mean by that specifically, and kind of talk to that point? Because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who get very, very involved in this hobby, either very quickly or over a long period of time. And so
Mhm.
I'm curious what your experience is there and what you have to say about that stuff.
Yeah, I've got a couple notes on it, and I don't want to go dark on you, but I think it's important, and I think it's something that all of us in the hobby have experienced, where we either bite off too much or literally, and somebody getting into the hobby, and of course you want for everything. It's like, oh damn, that's cool, I'll take that. But there will be a point in everybody's career as a hobbyist that you'll have so much that you actually don't appreciate what you have.
Right.
And at one point, especially working with the magazine, they would send you so much stuff that it's like, hey, cool, there's a box, and there'd be stuff that you wouldn't even unpack yet. And I know it was common with a lot of people that wrote for the magazine, Brandon being one of them. That it's like, dude, you have that still in the box? He's like, yeah, I haven't got to unwrapping it yet. Whereas you're initially into the hobby, it's like you're ripping stuff off. You're not even cleaning the boxes up off the floor. You're tearing into stuff. So I think there can be a point where you literally have so much, and you have so much that you don't appreciate what's there. And I think you can also put enough pressure on yourself that um, that you don't spend time doing some of the things that you need to do. And it's actually funny. The other day you mentioned that you thought it was strange that on my Instagram uh, that there were plants on there every once in a while, and there's a couple reasons I do that. One of them is in order for me to post probably every 5 pictures that's either hobby related
Yeah.
or related to reno stuff, is that I have to leave the house or leave what I'm doing to get outside and realize that there's nature out there. Um, Second of all, people that I follow and will always follow, like Rick Headquake,
Yep.
some of my favorite posts from Rick um, are of he'll go outside and he'll take a shot of a flower. Those are my favorite posts. I always love his trucks and what he does,
Yeah.
but getting to see what people do that are related to your hobby, that they do in their day to day life, or the fact that they appreciate other things. And I think that comes with family, it comes with friends, it comes with other hobbies, that you can do too much of one thing.
Hmm.
And I was guilty of that, and that's one of the things that probably forced things to unravel and not allow me to take care of Scale Builders Guild anymore. Is that there's just too much of one thing. At one point, myself and the moderators, we'd have, I think it was Thursday nights, we'd hop online, and this is before I got into the sim racing as a sickness. Uh, is we'd hop online and we'd go play, I think it was Gran Turismo, and we'd hop online, we'd go have a good time. Well, we were posting up in the bottom of the forum in a separate section,
Hmm.
hey guys, we're doing this. And some of the members, not the really cool ones that understood us and understood we had lives, be like, why are you guys posting that? Shouldn't you guys be taking care of this? And I think it's important to know that people do other things.
Hmm.
And if people want to experience what I do and appreciate what I do, well, they're going to have to look at the other stuff, because I'm kind of I kind of have a whole bunch of other hobbies and a whole bunch of other likes and another part of life. And if you want to experience people, I think you should have to experience all of it. So
Yeah.
this time around, I'm establishing the fact that I do other things. And if you want to participate, you can join. If not, I don't get paid for this stuff anymore. So it's an optional ride.
Fair enough, man.
Yeah.
What's absolutely hilarious is when you said this to me the other night, I realized that the photo that was currently my most recent Instagram pic
Mm,
was of the Valentine's Day box that I made for my son. And
I
so
saw that.
it was just made of cardboard. It's Miss Fritter, and for anybody who doesn't know what Miss Fritter is, she's like the new one of the newer characters in the Disney's Cars movie, Car 3. She was like a bus that was in a demolition derby like setting. And so he like latched onto that character and loved it. So I built him this Valentine's Day box and I posted it up and I was like, man, I feel like this will get like as much attention as my other stuff. Totally didn't. And so I was like,
Just
whatever.
But I think, dude, I will say that I enjoyed it just as much as anything else. I think that's beautiful, because you're sharing, you're putting yourself out there and you're sharing your life.
Yeah.
You're sharing the fact you have a family and that you're creative in so many other ways. And you are very creative, by the way. I'm a fan of your work as well.
Thank you.
It was
That's
awesome to
that's a lot.
see that, man. It's like, dude, you took that out of cardboard and you created something for somebody that you care about.
Hmm.
What gets better than that? And if somebody's not going to appreciate that, and I understand that people just want a quick hit, and it's like, just
Oh yeah.
be what I'm looking for. But I guess part of my message when you and I talked the other night wasn't necessarily for this. It was more of maybe a message to you, and it might maybe even make you consider things
Yeah.
as this awesome channel is kind of in its infancy. Is that you can maybe I can help people maybe not fall into the same traps and still be able to enjoy the hobby in the same fashion that they started out doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where the caution comes that you're spending too much time and energy on the same things. One of my favorite parts about the hobby in general is like the breadth of it. It's so big. And so the amount of different things you can do inside of the RC crawling hobby that may or may not be directly tied to it are, I mean, they're just endless, for the lack of a better way to say it. I've done everything from be uber competitive to build very, very intently to try to be extra scale to, I mean, you name it. I've done all kinds of stuff in this hobby. And as a result, like, I didn't expect any of that when I got in. I just wanted a truck that looked kind of real put to lift up, put big tires on, and drive in the mud.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. It's a progression, right?
yeah, absolutely. Um, okay. So at one point, you worked very closely with multiple manufacturers and so on in the hobby. Which companies have you worked with, and do you have any interesting stories along the process of how that worked, or relationships along the way, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity, and I will say opportunity to work with quite a few, large and small. One of the first ones that popped up was HPI Racing,
All right.
and I was, of course, these opportunities opened up. It was far easier to open doors once I started working for the magazine. The Crawl Canada forum at the time wasn't the magic ticket to get your feet in the door. It was more once the manufacturers realized that they were getting ad revenue or traffic in the magazines from having my builds in there. So one of the first ones that popped up was from HPI Racing, and it was for the release of the Cup Racer. Are you familiar?
I don't know that I am, to be honest with you.
Okay, so the HPI Cup Racer was one
Sweet.
of the first scale vehicles out of HBI. I mean, what I'm saying by scale is outside of just being a body on top of a chassis. The
Mm-hmm.
goal with this one was kind of show what you could do with their 12 scale car, uh, to show them how far you could go, or at least give them an idea how far you could go. So
Right.
this was a very early, and I won't say I won't dare say that this was the first scale on-road car or anything of the sorts. It kind of drives me. We touched on this, that it drives me nuts when people say, I'm an innovator. I thought of taking a Tamiya semi truck apart and making it something else. Uh, I think we need to look all the way across the world to see if maybe somebody else has done it before.
Right.
But this was my first scale, and it was in tandem with HPI, and it was a cup racer, and the chassis was mounted on their plate, or I should say, my chassis was adapted to their plate chassis and built out of brass. So it had, actually, at one time, it had one of Matt's figures. It was the Wild Wendy 2,
Okay.
which I have an interesting story about Wild Wendy 2. Wild Wendy 2 was actually the head for her with the two buns in her hair, was actually loosely modeled uh, off of my wife. Wild Wendy 2 was developed to actually be Martina, and then the heads that you see Matt do with the ball cap on it, the originals,
Yeah.
that was supposed to look like me. So then anytime we built one of these trucks, it looked like her and I were driving for all Canada trucks
That's
and
awesome.
cars. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's an honor that Matt would do that, and I have such a good relationship back and forth. I'm the
Yeah.
lucky one that when I ask Matt to participate in something, he's just like, "Yep." I don't even have to explain what it is. He's in all the way. So this was actually ended up being a tribute. It was called because it's a Datsun. They were called Fair Ladies in Japan. So we titled this My Fair Lady, and it was a build kind of as a tribute to Martina because of all the work that she did on the forum. Now, you probably won't be surprised that she has no interest in this and has never driven this car. She's like, that's sweet, honey, but I know she didn't care. But it was a tribute to her, so it was titled "My Fair Lady," and it was featured. It was probably one of my first feature articles in RC Car Action too. So they gave me the fold and
Mhm.
some of the surrounding pages for it. But this is when I first realized some lessons with the magazine and with manufacturers and the fact that they just will go over, and if you guys get the opportunity, know that manufacturers are willing to send you plenty of kits and plenty of product. Never be scared to say, you can send me one, but send me three. They don't care. So ask for everything you can get, and get as many resources as you can. That actually became two vehicles. One was in the backdrop of the kind of the photo shoot in my first scale workshop. The second one was a little Bluebird Datsun, so like a 510
Mhm.
that we use for other articles. But that was my first manufacturer build, and it's where I learned that you just ask for whatever you want because they sent all the upgrades. We had a brushless system in that,
Mhm.
and Rick actually radared it close to 60 miles an hour, which was nuts for a little short car.
I was gonna say that thing's
It,
tiny too, so that'd be hard.
yeah, we did that before. I will say we did that before the cage and the scale work went into it.
Yeah.
But one thing I should show you is that while it was primitive, it was on magnets and did build a scale engine in it as well.
Sweet.
And I don't know if you can see that or not, but some of the details in it are kind of funny now that you look at it now. You look at some of the 3D and even some of the handmade styrene engines.
Oh yeah.
This is a little laughable, but we joked around that it was the Godzilla build because it had a Skyline engine in it, but the turbo was made from a Wild Willie headlight set, and it's all recycled stuff. It was just
Right.
kind of getting creative with what you had, right? You used elastic bands for the belts and all kinds of little detail. For years, I've been using the stainless steel insulator. Makes good braided lines for things. So it's like each time you'd build one of these, you'd kind of learn different things, right?
Right.
This is also all set up on magnets. This whole body is magnetic, so the hood would go on with a magnet and all that stuff as well. So it was my early introduction to rare earth magnets. So yeah, along with HBI, I did quite a bit with Axial. So of course, they followed me through my days at the magazine and sponsored myself, and eventually the Scale Builders Guild, they became a sponsor for that as
Mhm.
well. Until the years later on where I started to lose patience with the sponsors and manufacturers.
Mhm.
Yeah,
All right.
and we can go into that if you want, but I don't know if you want to.
It's okay. We're gonna
Yeah,
skip that and move on to some of the other stuff.
it's probably better.
Uh, and we had talked about that a little bit before, and I think it's just one of
Yeah,
those like growing pains, shifts, changes, stuff like that.
yeah,
And as things happen over years of time and so on and so forth. So people who are like, oh no, keep going. No, really, like I don't. I think you guys could probably summarize it and figure it out. Like you're not missing a whole
sure.
lot in the conversation.
I would
So
also hate to have a somewhat jaded opinion and having it affect somebody else's experience because you could always go in and decide for yourself whether
right,
a situation is right for you or not.
absolutely.
And it ended up after I had some realizations that it just wasn't a good fit for me anymore.
Right, right. That's a great way to put it. I like it. All right. So, you just showed us a car, but I want to see more.
Yeah.
So which one is your favorite? And do you by chance have it, show it, any of those things? Is it kicking around?
Yeah. Do you mind if I just look through this just for 1 second
Oh,
here?
absolutely
Because I
use your
kind of
notes.
forget what's next. Okay. So you wanted to see another truck, right?
Oh
And I
yeah,
think
truck,
this actually
car, name it.
well, one thing that I have that has been getting some traction as of late is the Icon project. You want to see it?
Let's do that. Yeah,
Okay, so, and if you don't mind, I'm just gonna find the page that it's on because again, I made notes so I wouldn't forget stuff.
absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, dude.
So once you get up and running, I have to step away for like 2 seconds and I'll be right back. So
Okay.
people who are watching, if you don't hear my voice, that's because I've given him free reign. I trust
Oh,
him. He's got it for like 2 minutes
no.
and I'll be right back.
Don't you
So,
go. Okay.
all right. So once you're ready, I'll boot it over to you and I will be right back.
All right, dude,
Gotta go
hit the
take care of
button. We'll
something
just
quick.
wing it. We got this.
All
We
right.
got this.
Here you go, everybody.
Oh, all right.
Enjoy.
So, this, if anybody's been watching my YouTube channel at all, this is the project I'm working on with Jonathan Ward at Icon 4x4, and it is the chassis for an FJ 44, which is one of their unique builds. It's a stretch out FJ 4-door instead of two. So this is the chassis that I've been working on, and many of you who watch this, I've created this from brass with the help of Chris. Thanks, Chris, at GCM. And he created these frame rails for me. These are machined out of brass. And then the balance of the work is all handmade, hand cut brass, some aluminum, soldered and bolted together using scale hardware. It's got RC four-wheel drive early K44 axles that were modified, and that's probably the best shot is the back shot, modified by Chris at GCM. He shaved off some of the original perches, made custom mounts for things, including the sick as hell upper mount. And the goal with this is currently the current goal with this is to make it look as scale as possible. So I'm lucky to have reference photos from Jonathan and the ability to call him up, and he'll go out in the shop and he'll go out and he'll film sections of the truck if I need it, and say, hey, this is what we do with the back end for a triangulated four link setup, or this is what a mount looks like. So working back and forth, and it seems like a forever project. This was started in 2012, so with my my sabbatical, we'll call it, it's set aside, and now we're digging back into it this year and getting some momentum and traction on it. So it is on my Instagram page if you guys want to see pictures of it. It's at I think it's hashtag scale icon, I think is the group of photos. Otherwise, you can see the stuff on the page itself.
Yeah, and don't
So,
forget your YouTube channel either, man. Back
oh
already.
yeah, that's right. Oh, that's right. Thanks for coming back. That's a lot of pressure, dude.
I'm sorry.
No,
No,
it's
I just
okay.
put in so I just fixed my furnace in my basement and
Uh,
I could hear it making weird noises and I wanted to go check on it real quick cuz I've been having some issues. So ran over, did that real quick, made it back. It's nice to be able to flip the screen cuz otherwise it looked all funky but
yeah,
um
well played. We got it. Yeah, we covered that. And yeah, I have a my YouTube channel. I think you put the link on the thing
yeah,
below. Is that correct?
it's down below in the video description as well as your Instagram is also. So they're both there.
Yeah.
Definitely go check those out, guys. I know he kind of undersold his Instagram. All of the pictures rock. Forget the fact that like there's plants and
Oh, dude,
bushes. Like I love all that stuff. Uh,
forget the green stuff.
I'm with him. I love all that stuff. I think that people's Instagram should look like that. Mine doesn't. 'Cause I hide it to like customs, all that.
Sure.
Um, but at the same point, I mean, it should look like that. So I'm gonna skip, or actually, I'm not skipping. It's actually where I'm headed next in my line of questioning. For talks about
Yeah.
when like so I found you through someone who had requested you, and I swear up and down it was Donnie Branham who I had on last week, and he swears he was not it. So whoever requested him, shoot me a message and be like, I can't believe you forgot it was me. Um, but
Yeah, and
so
thank you, because very cool you guys included me. I've been away from things long enough that it's just an honor to be included in this, because I
yeah,
mean you've had some champions on here, people that I definitely look up to, and it's just an honor to be on here. I appreciate it, and I will say about the icon thing, I'm not the only one working on this. It might be something that I hope you didn't think I was going to glaze over, but I mean, from the work from Chris from GCM,
yeah,
the body is the first portion and the major portion. don't think you can see it, that will be up soon is the initial portions of the body was built by Noob. It was built by Richard Lutz. So
That's awesome.
I'm very fortunate to have had him on the project, and it will continue down the road that there'll be a couple other people on, including Matt Hicks, which can't give up too much of what's going on, but I'll say that there'll be custom figures that are one of a kind going in the build.
Awesome.
So I'll be kind of including people as I go along, and it's a pretty big treat to get to work with them and have everybody included. So
Yeah.
more to come.
I, I'm excited. I've been following it for a while now. I like the YouTube videos, the series of it. It's real cool.
Thank you.
I like how you're choosing to lay them out and to put them all together. Um, I think they're really well thought out, man. I think that you're doing a lot of pre-planning,
I
and
really appreciate that. It's been a learning curve because I don't do this. This isn't my living, so I'm enjoying the process of learning software and some of the techniques that, of course, people do for a living, like Matt.
yeah.
Uh, there's a learning curve going with it, so I know that people are, in some cases, impatient about the progress, but you have to understand, I'm learning how to actually document these and then turn out something that I hope is interesting, and I
Hmm.
hope they get better as they go along. I love the fact that you can actually watch things progress and you can watch people get better at things as you go along. So, like everything, and like I promise my customers, no vehicle will ever be perfect, nor will my videos.
Right.
And I think you actually had a question about this that was on here is who is this for
Okay.
and what
Yeah.
it's about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This truck is actually will be the 20th vehicle that the owner has bought and purchased for me in his collection, and his name's Noble. He's been working with me for years and buying some of my more, I'll say, more important projects, or probably more in depth projects. He owns most of the what I think are the cool ones, like the tow truck you guys will see in the thumbnail. He owns that
Absolutely.
one, and some of the unique stuff, including the rock buggy with Jason Wall and my ramp truck that I built, stuff like that. So this is going in a collection of 20, and it will go down to Jakarta and into a room. And one thing you will be happy about, you might not be happy that he's buying them and not building them, but he does run them. And if you look at his pictures on Instagram, almost every one of my vehicles actually has authentic dust on it. So
That's
he
awesome.
does use them, but I think he uses them and respects them enough that he doesn't use them.
Yeah, I'm happy. Like, I love that you snuck in the like might not be happy he's buying them. I seriously, if that's what makes people happy in this hobby, then by all means,
Yeah, dude,
like,
who cares,
yeah,
right?
no, I'm not against buying things or any of that. All I'm saying is that when it comes to the opportunity to buy it and the opportunity to build it, if you have a desire, chase the desire. Don't be afraid that it's not going to come out the way you want or whatever. It probably won't the first time, and that's fine. That's
It's
all
better
that
that
my
it
message
doesn't
usually.
because that's where your education lies.
Yep, absolutely. So I want to go back to the Instagram question because one of the first things that really keyed me in. So like, uh, I got introduced to you through a person yet to be named.
It's a mystery.
I'm sure they're like Adam. Oh, but it is okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. But anyway, so my introduction to you, like, I started following you. Guy like isn't posting a lot of RC stuff. Then I scroll down your feed and I'm like, oh,
He's
there's a lot in
broken.
there. And then
Yeah.
like but I was just blown away. Forget the RC stuff. Like every photo was like spot on. So it was well planned out, well thought out. Are you like trained in that instance? Do you uh like where did the skills for photography come from? Are you self-taught? Did you go to school? You know, all those questions.
Thank you very much. First off, thank you very much for that. And absolutely not am I trained in photography. The one thing that I have to my advantage is growing up in the hot rod or street rod family is that I've been around cars my whole life. And being a traditional artist, I spent my years drawing cars. And
Gotcha.
I'd run over and go, "Hey, Dad, look at this. This is a '66 Chevy 2." He'd be like, "That's really good. The marker light's in the wrong spot." which is fantastic, sort of.
Right.
So you go and run out and you go and fix it. Sometimes you'd redraw it. So I kind of grew up being able to look at things and look at shapes and objects and Lego help. That's a separate thing, but you'd be able to go and see proportions easier because it's like, dude, yeah, you're right. The marker light is in the wrong spot. Uh, I would be able to actually see cars, and I watched the photographers that would show up to take pictures of the cars for sale, and I watched kind of the way they'd shoot them. You'd see the end result and realize that there's a way to shoot a car that it highlights the lines in the body, or way to shoot it so it doesn't look like there's as much of a gap between the wheel and the fender or whatnot. So I was kind of lucky being around that. So I can say that I'm pretty good at shooting automotive stuff. You wouldn't want me taking picture of your dinner to post up on Instagram because it would look like you wouldn't want to eat it if I took that picture.
Right.
I have no formal training, but the gentleman that I mentioned coming up with the Scale Builders Guild name, Al,
Hmm.
he is a very talented photographer and has studied forced perspective for a long time. So he actually, this is what good buddies are for. He
Yeah.
actually saw some of the photos that I was taking. And if you look at some of my earlier work, like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. You can see where there's a transition. And that was the day that Al said, hey, dude, you want me to show you a couple things? And he would show me to change the aperture on a camera because we had a really good camera and I just wasn't using it properly. I'd be right in front of the car
Yep.
instead of you'd watch Al take a picture and he'd be 50 feet away with the car on top of a platform with the and I think Scale Builders Guild, you'll still see some of his photos. This guy ran on magic because he would take a platform, have it on a platform on a barrel 50 feet away, and it would look like a seamless transition between the car and the actual parking lot.
Hmm.
So he took some time to show me some stuff, and I watched the way he did that. And he also spent a lot of time in my earlier YouTube videos, especially ones for Axial. Al filmed those for me,
Yeah.
and he filmed them with one of the early GoPros because that was all that was available was early GoPros, and it
Hmm.
would be on the end of a broomstick, and he'd be moving around with it. And it was before you had access to gimbals and all this cool stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the way he shot stuff, he just showed me that when you shoot a truck going by, always have a tree in the foreground or something to show depth and perspective. So if I'm not in a rush, I always try to consider some of the lessons that he taught me.
Hmm.
And my other secret is take 200 pics to get two.
There you go.
Take lots, throw them in the garbage. You don't have to pay to get film developed anymore. Don't get
Exactly.
cheap with the free film. Take 200 photos because you might go and move something, and just moving it that little bit might realize that that was the photo that your camera in your hand was in the reflection of the window.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, and the other thing was just being a graphic designer, I'm lucky to have access to Adobe Creative Suite, and you can go and bump up saturation on stuff and play around with them a little bit.
Yep.
But uh, that's it. I appreciate that you like them and you like the variety of them is probably more important. It makes me laugh because one of my buddies that I work with, Jeff, he's always teasing me because I spend so much time on Instagram.
Hmm.
One of the reasons there's also plants in there is the green. I don't really make green vehicles,
Yeah.
so the green breaks up the spectrum, and it's a break visually between organic and not.
Hmm.
It's a visual break. So I always get teased. It's like, dude, it's time for some green. So
That's
that's one of
funny.
the other reasons to do it. It just, for me, it makes an interesting layout if you look at somebody's profile. And because I'm new to all this stuff, people look at your top 9 or whatever makes
Yep.
a square.
Yep.
They look at your top 9, and if you can always kind of lay it out so that current top 9 looks interesting and there's a bit of variety and there's a bit of color variety in there, then
Yeah.
maybe people will stick around. And if they don't, that's cool. Again, I don't get paid for this.
Yep.
This is free.
I don't get paid for Instagram either, but so on my photography one, I follow this guy on YouTube named Peter McKinnon. He's like
I do
huge
too.
YouTuber.
Yeah.
I really like him. I like his personality, but I also like how easily he sneaks in all the like technical stuff to help you learn how to do photography and videography. And so anybody who's interested, definitely search him out. I love all of his stuff. I follow it all, but he
Yeah.
does like the grid challenge stuff. So I tried one where it was like those top 9. You try to make them all go together. I did a fall one, and then I was gonna do a winter one, but like winter never came here. It's just like
Oh man,
everything is dead and
lucky.
dull, and the white snow never came. So I'm just waiting for spring and summer. I want to try and do that. But
The
that's like
color
the
goes drab in the winter without the snow, right?
yeah, it's so uninspiring. I do not want to take pictures outside right now. But
Yeah, I watch Peter too. I usually try to watch at least 3 a week. He's got very good tips for. I mean, if you're getting into Premiere, he's got great Premiere tips and stuff like that,
yep,
and it's pretty quick and concise. And much like myself, he'll go, "It's 2 Minute Tuesday." Those are 12 minutes
they're
usually.
20 minutes, man. They're like
Which is
20
the
minutes
ongoing
long.
joke, right? Is that, oh yeah, 2 Minute Tuesday, this is going to be a while. But
Yep.
they always kind of, it's just this natural thing that, I mean, I'm glad he runs on because I get all my tips from there. So I try to, I try to be pretty honest about learning this stuff as I go through. One of the things I did discover with Instagram the other day is I posted up a couple quick videos.
Yeah.
One was awkwardly me eating cereal, and I'll say that Jonathan Ward at Icon is pretty patient because he lets me post up videos to his site, and I'm eating a bowl of cereal on it. So he's got a sense of humor. But one video I posted up, and I forget what it was, got way more traction than my YouTube videos, and I'm maybe discovering that people are just looking for that quick hit.
hmm
Maybe some simple Instagram videos might be number one, fun to do because you have to do it in a different aspect ratio.
Yep.
So there's learning in that, but maybe people are just looking for that quick hit instead of listening to 20 minutes of voiceover because this is a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think Mike Mamola would be a good guy for you to talk to about that. He has a huge following,
Okay.
and all of his stuff is almost predominantly all of it is through Instagram. Very short video clips and lots of photography as well. And so I had him on and interviewed him, but his stuff's real cool. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely love it. His one
I'm going to
video
check it out.
blew up because someone thought it was real and posted it on like real 4x4 sites, and it just like um
Yeah, and I remember when that first happened in some of the early days of the forum, you'd get like a Jeep guy show up and say, "Oh, nice Jeep. What engine's in it?" It's like, "Well, it's a 540 electric motor." And you just watch people interact and members interact with them, and then you just kind of watch them realize that,
yeah.
"Oh, dude, I'm not looking at a real truck," which is for me, that's the magic in this.
Oh,
If you can
absolutely.
feel the real truck guy, uh, or a car guy for that matter, then you're doing pretty damn good. That
I
was one of my
couldn't
favorite
agree
things.
couldn't agree
Yeah,
more. uh
yeah.
okay, so who are some of your influences in the scale crawling segment of our hobby, and if you were going to pick someone to have on the show, who would you pick and why?
I've got some. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, so when I first got back in, I was actually on Tamiya Club first. So um, the guys on there were um, excuse me, James Knight,
Yeah.
Matt Hicks, and Jeremy Fish. And I watched those guys like crazy because they had beautiful style. Uh, James and Jeremy both built a lot of buggies and stuff like that, and the stuff they did with vintage sand scorchers, to me that was magic stuff. So I've followed those guys all the way through Tamiya Club and all the other forums, and it's been an honor to do stuff with them and enjoy this with them. So those guys were big, and I know you've had a couple of them on. I would
hmm
strongly suggest Jeremy, if he'd be willing to come on, would be a great guy.
yeah. I follow his stuff on Facebook, I think, or maybe even Instagram too. I
Mm-hmm.
so can't remember. I follow so many people, man. I think that's one of my biggest downfalls right now. In searching people, I just follow so many that I'm oversaturated.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's it for sure. Is there's so much to watch, but I think people find that they have their favorites. They have their favorite style, so you kind of root people into the styles if they build similar styles to you, or
Hmm.
if you've followed them all the way along. And lucky enough with Scale Builders Guild is we had, especially for a stretch, we had a fairly small community, so we were a pretty tight knit group, enough that if you showed me one of Richard's trucks or one of Jeremy's trucks, I could tell you whose it was
Right.
just by looking at them. You just get that sense of style, right?
Hmm.
And do you mind me saying on the top of Richard, both Richard and Dion, they were both my favorite interviews, because I'll give them B for balls, to come on here, especially when you're somebody like ourselves, and come on as your debut. It's a real thing to put yourself out there, and I'm glad they did, because if they hadn't, I might not have said yes to coming and doing this.
Yeah.
So thank you to those two guys for going on and doing this. I think it's important to go and try things that's kind of outside your comfort level. I think it was an important message that they sent.
Yeah. Well, and when I started all this, I was not comfortable at all doing it. I just thought
Right?
it was a
Yeah.
good idea. I didn't even want to be the one to do it. I just thought it was a good idea, and I was like, okay, well, I
It's a
guess
good
I'm in
idea
it
for
now.
sure.
And
Yeah.
now I'm fine. But when I first started, it was definitely a stretch, and I get and can sympathize with what they had going on, and I cannot
Sure.
believe the people that say yes. Uh,
Yeah.
very very rare do I ever get anybody who's like, nah, I'm good. It's almost always a yes, and so that was one of the things that I didn't expect in doing all of this, and it's been really awesome, and it's been a good
I'm
time.
glad that I'm glad that everybody has chosen to do so. And if you get asked and you're considering it, just pull the trigger, just do it. It's worth it, because it's a great experience getting to talk with you. Number one, we had a great time talking the other night
Yeah.
without. And just to be clear, I'm bricking it right now. I can barely hold a coffee mug without shaking, so I'm bricking it. But we're doing it anyways,
Oh
right?
no, dude,
Uh,
you're knocking it out of
it
the
was.
park. I wouldn't worry about it at
Thank you.
all.
Thank you. Thank you. Even just say that until we get through the end, so I don't fall apart. Thanks, dude. My others besides Jeremy Fish, which I'm not sure if you've asked him, but I think you should, because I love seeing his work. I love his style, and the guy is a master at choosing color and laying things out and shooting stuff in a scale environment.
Mhm.
He's very good. And even his one-to-one stuff. I don't know if you know him much, but
I don't. I followed a bunch of his builds, but I don't know a
yeah,
lot about him. So
build some killer Volkswagens, all the way from microbuses to he's working on a pretty sick Volkswagen Bug right now. So he's a one-to-one guy, and very creative, and a lot like ourselves, a lot of other hobbies that,
mhm.
man, they're interesting to me. So I would suggest Jeremy Fish. Matt Hicks, I think, would give you a really unique interview if he'll come on, because he's the guy behind these folks, these little guys, and he builds all of my stuff, and maybe you can convince him to show you some of the collection. I know he's always got stuff being painted and kind of in queue for customers,
Right
and
on.
he's worked in the toy industry for years. His father carved many of the toys for Mattel that we played with as kids. Well, not you, but I played with as kids. And then many folks that have kids that are my age, they're playing with the toys that Matt's created. So that family has been in the industry, and he's a master of his craft, and he's a wonderful man to talk to. You think we had a long conversation the other night? You should hear some of the stuff that we go through. I would definitely see if, and I don't mind asking if you wanted to see if you could have him on.
Yeah, I
Um,
definitely would be interested, man.
yeah, yeah. I've got Alan Werner and Matt Crary. Matt is the brother of Rick Crary, the guy that I traveled down south with, my original moderator. Both Alan and Matt have had full scale cities in their basement that we used to drift through and race cars through. And I'm talking about racing them in daylight and also shutting the lights off, and they were lit at night, and it required headlights to race through the cities. So Matt was also he had a local forum for a drift club that I was actually part of the drift club, and he was part of my inspiration for the early Crawl BC site and Crawl Canada, because he was so good at bringing the community in and make them feel welcome and sharing information, like literally showing people how to drive cars and drift cars. And he drifts real cars. His daily driver is a drift car, and he drives it to work as I think he's a gas fitter. by trade, and he drives a drift car as his daily driver. So like interesting cats,
Yeah.
and like I said, Al Werner showed me how to shoot video and stuff. Some interesting guys. Mark Hall from TGN would be one. And one that I know that everybody else has suggested is Chris Middleton. He's like a metal warlock. Uh, he can metal like nobody's business, and he's built quite a bit of stuff from me. And he's one of the guys that I visit when I go up to the interior of BC. I
Hmm.
rarely drive by Chris's house without crashing the night or going out and doing stuff. He's worked on my real cars before. He's a performance Ford mechanic, so
Hmm.
he'd be an interesting cat as well. So those would be my suggestions. Uh,
Awesome.
but I know many have mentioned some of them before, but some of these guys are unique that you may not have thought of.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and
Cool.
I appreciate every time someone throws names out there because they always go on the list, and they get tracked down sometimes right away, sometimes eventually. It all depends. My list is really big right now, and
I
that's
bet.
super intimidating to me, by the way. But
What
it's
part? What part though?
it just is. It just like it feels like it's monumental, and like I don't know when it ends.
Okay. Well, it might not, and that might be part of our conversation from the other
Yeah.
night.
Um.
Might not.
So, what is your favorite build or truck out there on the internet that is not your own? I feel like this is one of the hardest questions to ask people. They definitely struggle with
Not me. I've
this.
got answers. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Number one would be Rick Crary's Big Bird build, and I think Matt Pett answered the same. Rick was a guy that he is a guy.
Hmm.
Let's establish that Rick is a guy. He travels down south. He goes to Johnson Valley to the Hammers twice a year with his real Forerunner. And in the early years, our very first contest on Crawl Canada was the scale throwdown. So Rick, I finally convinced Rick, go try it, go try it. And previously he'd built AX10s, and you throw a body on, he can make things perform like nobody's business.
Hmm.
So he goes home and he kept part of this a secret. Like he didn't show people what he was building, but what seemed like in a matter of weeks, he turned out a scale version of his truck that I would say today still stands up against some of the scale builds. I mean, doing stuff that I'd never seen before, taking a real taillight out of a car, carving it down so you have the taillight material, to
Crazy.
welding the cage, to also getting Matt Hicks built. Gave him a Wild Wendy for the build. It's beautiful. So that would be my number one choice. Um, it's only number one though. It would be number two if I didn't have something else sitting here beside me. Are you interested?
Yes, I'm very interested, and I'm transitioning to you.
Okay, so my number one choice would be Headquake's Jeep FC 170, and I know that millions of the people on the internet have seen it before. It would be my number one choice if I didn't actually have one of my own built by Rick right here.
Awesome.
So I know for a fact I shouldn't say I know for a fact. That's not, we talked about not doing this and not spilling out facts that might not be true. I think this is only one of the two people in the world that actually get to have one of Rick's creations. I'm pretty sure Matt Kett has one of the other ones. He has one of the Dodge builds,
All
and
right.
I think he still owns it. I sure hope he does. I think we're one of the only two people in the world that actually get to have one of Headquake's creations. So, I mean, this is a treat. And Rick built this for me. We had my wife and I had a cat, Big Lou. Unfortunately, he passed the year this was made. And Rick, I think you guys all know, we've established he's a cat guy.
Yeah.
Of course, a close buddy, a moderator of the forum, and a good friend. I asked him if he'd be interested in turning out a tribute build that him and I could build together. So he actually turned out this FC Jeep 170 as a tribute to our cat. So as I dig back into this, now it has sat for a couple years, and like the other projects, had to blow the dust off, but
Oh
I
yeah.
still have it, and I can't wait to dig into it. The pressure will be on because going and taking something as popular as one of Rick's builds
Yeah.
and trying to do something with it. I mean, pressure's on, but it would be fun to combine what he does while he whittles away at wood. It's dude is magic. He is a magical human. Uh, what he does with wood. I will go and add what I do, whatever you want to call that,
Mm-hmm.
and work some metal and build some stuff. And so this is one of the projects on the go. So the answer to my favorite would be Rick's 170, but I have my own. So Big Bird's Toyota.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier to pick another favorite then, huh?
It does. So I'm being greedy. I got two. If I could get that Toyota off of Rick, I would have that forever because that was magical to watch somebody go and pour themselves into a project and be kind of out of their comfort zone and just go and do that well. Something else that
Yeah.
did he mop up in the scale competition that year? The answer is yes. And Rick, if you're watching, which I think you will, because I'm sending you a message and telling you to watch this, this is your trophy from
Oh
that
wait,
year.
coming back.
I've had this. See that okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So Rick won so many trophies that year, and I built these out of fish tank ornaments. They had a Canadian flag. We're on a budget here. So I built the trophies out of
Awesome. I
fish
love
tank
it.
ornaments, and it had these original plaques at the start. Well, this guy mopped up so good that year, he won 5 awards. And he said, well, I mean, I like your fish tank trophy. It's really great, but I don't want 5 of them on my shelf. It's a little repetitive. Would you combine them? This year, when I found out I was doing this, I finally dragged out all the stuff and I put it together a few weeks back and actually put this together. So, Rick, your trophy's here. I owe you a coffee and a trophy. It's only 9 years late. Sorry, dude. And congratulations, because you're still kick ass.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the fish tank trophy. I think it's great.
Do what you can with what you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh what advice would you give someone who is just starting out in this hobby? We've talked a lot about people who are very involved. We've talked a lot about your road down this hobby that's been very involved. If someone who's brand new happens to still be watching this far in, what advice would you give them?
Walk in, don't run.
Nice.
A little bits at a time. Appreciate what's going on, what you have, because I mean, you wouldn't have bought it if you didn't want it. So experience it as it is. I remember back to that very first Hornet build that I got. Once I had that, ended up being technically my first working vehicle because I was able to drive it and literally wear this car out. So
Mm-hmm.
I was able to experience that and just bring everything I possibly could out of that chamois until there was nothing left, and I was able to get to know that car. And I know it's a common answer, but I still think it's the best one. Get to know your stuff because you can learn how to drive something that's awkward if you continue to do it because we'll adapt as humans.
Right.
Don't spend a fortune. Go and find a group that values you as much as you value them. Try to take their advice and try to sort through the good advice from the bad. And don't spend too much right away. I never think you. I don't think you ever benefit from early adoption, whether it's a new product or buying all the gear all at once. Walk in, pace yourself. Don't spend family money on it. Spend your hobby money on it only. Don't get into trouble.
Yeah. Absolutely. I second that. I've always done that. It's always been hobby money versus household money. And you and I had talked about that in our test feed. I think that's a good conversation to have with a lot of people as well. Not knocking anybody and telling you what to do with your money.
No,
It's just the
spend it
way
if you
it's the way
want.
that I've always operated it because a hobby is a hobby is a hobby, and so it should have its own revenue stream.
For,
So
for sure. Part of our agreement when I got into this, and Martina saw how serious I was about it, was that you can get whatever you want. If you can make the hobby make money, you can spend it on the hobby.
hmm
And which was part of coming up with frame rails and these crazy ideas on how to make money. That wasn't a good one. It
yeah,
was an experience and I learned a lot, but I was technically able to make the hobby pay for itself because I kind of worked myself into having the forum and having sponsors. So if you did have an idea, I could call up Axial and they'd ship a box to the house.
right.
technically it worked, but it still cost a fortune to build this stuff, as you and
I,
everybody else that
yep.
may still be watching completely understand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is an expensive hobby, so slowing down and pacing yourself is definitely the way to go. You don't have
I
to
think so.
always have the highest dollar item, the biggest ticket thing, and do it with the cheap stuff.
Yeah, I think unless you're a collector, if you have more than two sitting on the shelf that aren't getting used, then you have probably two too many because you're not appreciating the stuff that you have.
Right. I like that. That's a good statement. Um, so where do you see the scale crawling community heading in the coming years?
I don't know if I'm fully qualified to answer that because I've been away for so long, but
Yeah.
at least I know what I think. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, and I think you are fully qualified because I think that you are seeing um over the last year or two there's been a big shift. And I think that with you being back in over that last little bit of time, you you should have seen the massive jump. So
Mhm.
I'm just curious, as someone who's been in as long as you've been in, or out in and out as long as you've been in and out, like what do you see coming?
Uh, I think, at least I hope, that with things progressing all the way from the old TLT axle days and working on a hope and a dream to all the innovative stuff that people like James have done with 3D,
Yep.
that now you'll have access to very realistic stuff where you're not limited because of the mechanical contents. You're not limited to the actual surrounding or housings that go with it, whether it's an axle. You see working axles that now are sturdy enough to hold up
Mm-hmm.
to at least a little bit of punishment that actually look realistic.
Yep.
So you don't have to go and spend $600 in machining to make an axle look like a 44. You can just get one built, and I think that's magic. I don't think, and I have this conversation with Matt Hicks all the time. I always ask him what he thinks about 3D, and I think I'll let him answer that. But the gist of what we come up with is, why does it matter how you get there as long as you get there?
Mm-hmm.
There's no right or wrong in that either. So I think with what's going on, you'll see people work more towards what I'm calling recently working models.
Yeah.
So, and I think I get that from a while back. Somebody accused me of just only making working models. Like, dude, you don't go and run your trucks; you make working models. So they're probably right. And the more I think about that, I think that's actually pretty cool, because a working model would imply that it's fairly realistic. And you're throwing the word working in there at least. You give me the benefit of the doubt that one of these suckers will steer. So my hopes is that we actually get towards, and people, look, don't get me wrong, people have already accomplished this, like Noob and Matt and all these guys that, dude, they're already making working models. But I don't know if maybe we'll be referring to them as that later on, just because that's what they are. I mean, they're making stuff that is fooling one-to-one guys into thinking it's a real deal. So
Yeah.
I think that's where things are going, regardless of how you get there. If you whittle it out of wood, or make it art, because stuff like headquake stuff is art
Yep.
as much as it is a scale build. Or you make things that they're very very realistic, and you spend a couple years doing it. I think that we'll be moving towards the working model.
Yeah.
That's my hope, anyways, because that's where I live.
Yeah, and I think that to throw my 2 cents in there, I think that you're very right for half of it. I
Okay.
think that there is a big crowd headed that direction, of guys who have phenomenal skills that are just going to blow everything we've ever seen out of the water. Um, but I also think that there's this other side, and I don't know if it's a competition oriented side or if it's to just go out and have fun oriented side. But there's this side where it's just growing profusely. So the guys who've been doing the like making scale models thing are your guys who've been in it for the long haul. The guys who've been doing this a long time. There's new people doing it. There's new people coming in all the time, but most of the time there's seasoned, experienced, veteran people in this hobby. But there's a whole nother side that I don't know where it's headed yet, but it's coming and it's coming fast.
Okay.
So I'm interested to see that piece too.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm interested in all of it. Of course, the scale end of things more than anything, but I'm always
Right.
interested. I was always interested in RC in general. I flew planes for a while until they were taken away from me as a kid because it was just too expensive and too dangerous.
Right.
So I like it all. I appreciate it all. It's radio control.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. All right. Interesting one for you. What is your view on sponsorship inside of the RC crawling segment of the hobby?
Oh boy, good and bad in both. It's good as long as you don't let ego get involved in it.
Okay.
And I think all of us are vulnerable to having ego taking over things and doing things for the wrong reasons. If you go and do sponsorship, I think it's an amazing thing if you're doing it for the right reasons. So I love seeing, and I've gotten the opportunity to work with great companies over the years, and they might not have necessarily been sponsors. But I think Chris and Dana, by the way, two great guys. What better guys to represent Canada, right? Um, I worked with Chris for ages. I mean, I helped promote his early GCM chassis in the magazine, and he also always made sure that I had parts. So I think working with folks like that are great for our industry and actually truly care about what I'm putting together and putting out the best products and supporting me with products, I think that's a great thing. And I think it's a great thing to be an ambassador for a company and go and represent a company. If you're just looking for free parts, dude, that stuff is not free. It's not free because you're going and putting your name on something that you might not believe in if you're just doing it for free stuff.
Right.
Um, and I mean, what does it really all mean? You're going to have to go and do for myself. Uh, if you consider labor for a creative job at over $100 an hour, you go out and spend 3 hours on the rocks taking a picture of a car for a $30 body.
Yep.
The math doesn't work out, right? You're not saving anything, and your time's worth something. And I think that people also have to consider what their time's worth. And it was one of the realizations is when I got in with the magazine is the value of one page in that magazine. And I won't tell you the number, but I could tell you that each magazine is worth more than two trucks
Mm-hmm.
to buy ready to run trucks. So if you're putting yourself out there and you're really good at what you do, make sure that people value you and they value your work, because it's the the monetary value that you could put on that is probably higher than most people would even imagine.
Right.
So these manufacturers, the big manufacturers, they can, believe me, they can afford to send you 5 trucks over. They don't care. So you make sure that you're getting valued as I mean, if you're putting the effort in and you're really representing a company well, you make sure that company represents you and cares about you just as much. And if it is just about getting the accolades for your work, you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons, just to have team driver in the bottom of your signature on a form or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more important things to be worried about.
All
But
right.
sponsors are great if you can help subsidize a hobby and really enjoy working with people. I've got the opportunity to work with some great companies and have people not necessarily sponsor me, but be involved in my stuff. I have a local hobby shop here that almost every build that I put into RC Car Action, if Car Action would refuse to send the extra parts, my buddy Cam at GoGo Hobbies would go and actually give me the parts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd make sure to get in the magazine. And there's just some things that as you progress through this, you'll find people that might not be necessarily sponsors. And I think Chris and Dana touched on this, that you're establishing a relationship with people and you're building friendships and building a trust between them.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've come to learn well over the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Meeting as many people and talking to as many of them. And so not only on the show, but in the interview, like the pre-interview stuff and I'm not like getting floated free stuff all the time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like now I can reach out to these people and um like I have a resource. If I need something that they do really well, like now I'm not like I'm gonna muddle through this. I'm gonna reach out to Dion and like get this printed. Like
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go get that. So it's the building of the connections, and I see that being a piece of all of it for sure.
Sure. I think as we make it through this, and as you experience this going through it, you're going to find that things just fall on your doorstep naturally. If you do a good job and you care about people, good things will come back at you. And whether that's products or support or recognition or cross promotion,
Hmm.
I think you just keep leaning into it and you do a good job. And instead of searching out sponsors and relationships, they'll find you naturally.
And I couldn't agree
Otherwise, it's not a
more.
good fit.
Yep, couldn't agree more. All right, man. I'm wrapping up the end here.
You got
I
to
have
go to
my
bed, don't you?
I do. It's like
Uh,
it's getting late for me, but it's okay. I wanted to see it through, make sure we got everything because it has been awesome and I genuinely appreciate it. Thank you for being on. I never know what I'm gonna get when I send that message of like, hey, would you like to do this? So I'm just glad you responded and you were in, and I enjoyed our pre-interview conversation. I enjoyed this conversation. I thank you for withholding things from me because it made it
yeah,
so
cool.
much better. Um,
Awesome.
Absolutely loved it. And so, really, I guess my last question is, what should we expect to see next from you, man?
It might not sound very nice, but whatever I want, I guess, right? Because I'm just doing my own thing. Um, I'll be finishing up. I've got 6 builds on the go. Some of them you've seen. One of them is up there. It's a Volkswagen Bug, which is another tribute to somebody.
Hmm.
And I'll be finishing those. Some of these have been on the go for a long time, and I have some catching up to do, but I'm getting there. So I'll be doing builds. I'll be doing the YouTube channel stuff. If you want to follow me on there, you can. I'm
Link in
trying to
the
get my
description. Just
yeah.
saying.
Oh yeah, link wherever it is. And then Instagram. I'm learning as I go, but I'm trying to get it up and running. If you'd like to join me, I'd love to follow you back because I'm still just discovering people, including the one we were talking about the other day, and I found him, by the way.
Yeah.
Constantine, and I'll screw this up. Bogodov, I think is his name on YouTube.
Oh
If you look
yeah,
up,
that guy. Yes, we
if you
talked
look up
about him.
Constantine is
Oh
his
my
first name.
gosh.
I think it's a Fargo that he built. And if you want to watch some incredible builds, him and on Instagram, Otaka, which is somebody that James got me onto, and I've been back and forth with him. He built some beautiful stuff, handmade trophy trucks for sponsors and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Um, I'm always discovering new stuff. So if you guys hit me up on Instagram, I'd love to see what you're building, and I'm learning how to do hashtags, so and stuff like that. So I'm trying to get some things maybe rolling that maybe we can share communities. I follow hashtag Tiny Trucks and of course Scale Builders Guild all
Oh
the
yeah.
time. They're my faves, but it's amazing to be able to get a quick hit on Instagram. YouTube's my television, Instagram's my quick hit, and if I want to get information or how something's built, I always go over to the forums.
There you go.
So hit me up there. I'm always going to be building a mixture of. I build weird gadgets like the ones seen over there that you and I talked about,
Hmm.
and maybe some iRacing stuff on YouTube. And lastly, my buddy and I, Jeff, are actually starting a podcast, or at least giving it a try. So uh, that might be interesting, and it might not have RC stuff in it. We'd have to find out. I don't even know what's going to be in it. It's going to be two guys talking about stuff they like.
I will subscribe to that and follow and listen to it because currently I've been listening to a podcast that's literally about two guys talking about random crap. So
Cool. Well,
I
then
I
we're your
literally have
guys.
been doing
We
that
got a
on my way
viewer.
to work. So
Awesome,
I
dude.
just switched the guys. It's all good.
Awesome. It's been awesome. It's been amazing that you've had me on, and again, I'm honored that you asked me to be on. Had a really good time. This is a great experience for me because this is my first one.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing this with me, and thanks to everybody else that did videos with Adam before because I've watched all of them. I guess I'm a super fan. Some of them I even watched twice because I know the folks personally. So it's been cool to see everybody on, and you're doing great stuff here. It's amazing.
Thank you. I just keep trying. I keep plugging away, and I know you're a fan of all of my mistakes, but I'm not always a fan of all of my mistakes. So we'll get to one of these points where you're gonna be like, "Oh man, he did it right this time."
what? There's no volume issues? There's some beauty in transparency, and we're all human. So I actually enjoy when, and it's, I don't mean to sound mean. I enjoy when I find out that people aren't perfect, because it just
Yeah.
makes me feel like a normal guy, because
Yeah.
I screw stuff up all the time.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to let you go. All right, and
Cool.
then I'll finish out the show, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. I'm gonna go drink more coffee, and I'm gonna go wake up.
All right. Talk to
Thanks,
you in a
dude.
minute. Yep. See ya. All right, so that does it for this week's Live at 9:45 with Kevin. Next week, I will be live studio with my next guest. I can't remember who it is, so let me flip through my thing real quick here. Oh, and I didn't write it down, so it's in my phone. But I will tell you all over the course of the next week. I'll let you know who it's going to be. I'll post up an event, and we'll do another live at 9:45. I appreciate you guys all for tuning in, sticking with it through to the end. Make sure you go down into the video description area, because there are lots of great links there this time. Check out my website, all of that great stuff, but also all of Kevin's stuff. He also has not only just the link to Scale Builders Guild and the link to his YouTube and his Instagram, but there's also a link in there to his section in Scale Builders Guild. So you can go check out a bunch of those builds that we talked about along the way that we maybe didn't have the opportunity to show or anything like that. They're all linked in there. And so that would be a great resource for you to go look and check out. And if you're new to forums, that would be an amazing experience for you. All right. Without further ado, thank you all for tuning in. I will catch you all next week on another episode of Live at 9:45. If it wasn't for all of you, it would just be me talking to a camera, and that would be super boring. So I'll catch you all next week.